right. Welcome to the noon briefing. All right, good afternoon. I think you heard and you saw Sigrid Kaag, our special coordinator for the Middle East peace process and senior humanitarian coordinator for Gaza, briefed the Security Council. She told the members that this may be our last chance to achieve a two-state solution, reiterating that all hostages must be released while in captivity. They must be allowed to receive visits and assistance from the International Committee of the Red Cross. And she said the resumption of hostilities must be avoided at all costs. Ms. Kaag called on both sides to fully honor all their commitments to the ceasefire deal and conclude the negotiations for the second phase. She told the Council that we are ready to support reconstruction efforts and that Palestinians must be able to resume their lives, they must be able to rebuild and to construct their own future in Gaza. There can be no question of forced displacement. Ms. Kaag will be speaking to you at the Security Council stakeout after she's done with closed consultations. Yes. Turning to the situation on the ground in Gaza, the Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs tells us that our humanitarian partners, in collaboration with the Ministry of Health in Gaza, that yesterday they continued to administer polio vaccinations for the third day to about 548,000 children under the age of 10. This represents 93% of the target population. The campaign has been extended till tomorrow to ensure full coverage. Since the start of the ceasefire, our friends at the World Food Program have brought in more than 30,000 metric tons of food into Gaza. More than 60 kitchens supported by WFP across the Gaza Strip, including in North Gaza and in Rafah, have handed out nearly 10 million meals. For its part, the UN Relief and Works Agency, UNRWA, tells us that its teams have reached nearly 1.3 million people with flour and reached about 2 million people with food parcels since the start of the ceasefire. The head of Gaza's Ministry of Health said today and told us that 6 children from the Gaza Strip died in recent days due to severe cold, and bringing to 15 the total number of children who've passed away from the cold. And the Food and Agriculture Organization also tells us that last week it delivered animal feed to northern Gaza for the first time since the ceasefire, benefiting 146 families with livestock in Gaza, alongside another 980 in Deir al-Balah. So some in Gaza City, some in Deir al-Balah. Over the past 4 days, our partners working in education have identified additional schools in Rafah, Khan Yunis, and Deir al-Balah that were used as shelters for displaced people. These schools will be assessed and repaired to prepare for their reopening. And turning to the situation in the West Bank, OCHA reports that security situation remains alarming, with the ongoing Israeli operations in the north causing further casualties, mass displacement, and generating additional humanitarian needs due to the displacement. In Jenin Governorate, the 2-day operation in Kabatia was concluded yesterday. The operation was launched with bulldozers involving exchange of fire between Israelis and Palestinians, as well as detentions and significant destruction of infrastructure, including electricity lines, water lines, and the closure of schools. We once again warn that lethal warlike tactics are being applied, raising concerns over the use of force that exceeds law enforcement standards. Meanwhile, the World Food Program tells us it reached 190,000 people in January with cash assistance in the West Bank and provided one-off cash assistance to more than 5,000 people displaced from the Jenin refugee camp. I think you all saw yesterday that in the Security Council, Rosemary DiCarlo, our Undersecretary General for Political and Peacebuilding Affairs, briefed the Council on the situation in Ukraine. She said that during these 3 long years since Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, more than 10 million Ukrainians remain uprooted. They are either internally displaced or they have sought refuge abroad. She reiterated our commitment to delivering assistance to those who need it, as we've been telling you almost on a daily basis. Referring to the resolution in the Council adopted during the meeting yesterday, Ms. DiCarlo said, "It is indeed high time for peace in Ukraine. This peace, however, must be just, sustainable, and comprehensive in line with the Charter of the United Nations, international law, and resolutions of the General Assembly, including the one that was adopted yesterday morning." In Rome, the 16th Conference of the Parties of the Convention on Biological Diversity resumed today. The meeting will resume discussions that were left unresolved after the first session that was suspended in Cali in Colombia last year. In a message to the conference, the Secretary General said, the world is approaching dangerous tipping point. It is now imperative that participants reach an agreement in Rome and on how biodiversity finance commitments will be honored and how progress towards implementing the Kunming-Montreal Global Diversity Framework will be monitored. He also urged all parties to recognize that no one wins if these talks fail. Our Deputy Secretary General is on her way to Cape Town in South Africa, where she will participate tomorrow in the G20 Finance Ministers meeting. Earlier today in Nairobi, she met with William Ruto, the President of Kenya. They discussed regional peace and security, including the situation in Haiti. They also discussed Kenya's efforts to transform food systems and advance sustainability. As part of her engagement in the second UN Food System stock taking, Ms. Mohammed chaired a meeting to launch the preparatory process, bringing together a diverse group of stakeholders. Discussions focused on elevating ambition and identifying the concrete shifts needed across the ecosystem to drive food system transitions with tangible results for people and planet. She also visited the Alliance for a Green Revolution in Africa, where she held a town hall meeting and discussed the organization's critical role in driving food system transformation across the value chain and across the African continent, advancing Africa's agricultural agenda and ensuring long-term sustainability in food production. I also want to say that the Secretary General welcomes the peace agreement signed 2 days ago between the Senegalese government and the Front du Sud movement of the Force Démocratique de Casamance, known as the MFDC. The Secretary General calls on all parties to respect the agreed ceasefire and swiftly implement the provisions of the agreement. The Secretary General calls on the remaining factions of the MFDC to engage with the government of Senegal towards negotiated resolution to the conflict. The Secretary General expresses his gratitude to the government of Guinea-Bissau and other partners for their role in facilitating these negotiations. Turning to the situation in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, our humanitarian colleagues tell us that in the Masisi territory in North Kivu province in the east, fighting has now claimed the lives of at least 4 civilians and injured 15 others, as well as disrupting humanitarian deliveries. Humanitarian assessment in the area, In South Kivu, local officials say the schools in Kalehe territory, about 65 kilometers north of Bukavu, are gradually reopening. Schools had closed several weeks ago as fighting exposed children and teachers to massive human rights violations. At the same time, our partners report that unexploded ordnances remain a problem in many areas affected by recent fighting, including 2 schools in Minova, north of Bukavu. Our OCHA stresses that all parties to the conflict in the eastern DRC must uphold international humanitarian law at all times, protecting civilians and civilian infrastructure. And during a press conference in Juba yesterday, Jean-Pierre Lacroix, the head of our Peace Operations Department, expressed concern over the humanitarian crisis and loss of life in the DRC, stressing that there is no military solution to this crisis and reiterating that while it is encouraging to see progress and involvement from stakeholders, their priority is the cessation of hostilities, implementation of decisions implementation of decisions from the Luanda process, and ensuring humanitarian access. He added that the mission faces limitation in areas that is currently controlled by the M23, but continues to protect civilians and reduce violence in other areas, safeguarding hundreds of thousands of civilians daily. Mr. Lacroix also noted that if hostilities cease, the UN stands ready to actively support a ceasefire. Turning to Chad, which is facing a very challenging humanitarian situation, our humanitarian colleagues warn about the impact of the forthcoming lean season on food security in the country. According to a regional assessment, some 2.4 million people are food insecure, and this number is expected to increase to 3.7 million, or 20% of the population, during the upcoming lean season, which runs from June to August. More than 2 million children under the age of 5 are malnourished, including more than 500,000 children who are suffering from severe acute malnutrition and are at risk of dying in the coming months without the appropriate treatment. Additionally, nearly 300,000 pregnant and breastfeeding women are also suffering from acute malnutrition. This crisis is due to shocks, including natural catastrophes such as floods, which have destroyed croplands, in addition to the increasing price of basic commodities. Our humanitarian colleagues warn that significant funding is not received before the end of March. There will be no time to prevent a full-scale food security and nutrition crisis. The $1.45 billion humanitarian response plan for Chad is only currently 4% funded, with just under $60 million in the bank. And speaking of appeals, in Haiti, the humanitarian response plan for 2025 will be officially launched today, jointly with the Prime Minister of Haiti, Alix Didier Fils-Aimé. We and our partners will need $908 million this year to provide aid and protection to 3.9 million vulnerable men, women, and children. As you know, armed violence has caused immeasurable suffering in Haiti, particularly among women and children, displacing more than 1 million people and plunging almost half of the Haitian population, into an acute food crisis. And today, just before the start of Ramadan, the International Organization for Migration launched the Islamic Philanthropy Fund. The fund aims to harness the spirit of the Islamic charity and help support some of the world's most vulnerable people. Through this new initiative, Muslims around the world can channel their contributions, known as zakat, through a trusted and efficient platform, maximizing their positive impact. Almost 75 million people globally have been uprooted by conflict, by disaster, by insecurity. And in its inaugural year, the fund is prioritizing the Sudan Emergency Response Fund by delivering cash to displaced families, those stranded at the borders, and communities in urgent need of assistance. Benno, close your laptop. Maggie, turn your phone over. Flip it over. All right. Wait. Yes, exactly. Don't think it went unnoticed. 2 more member states boosted our coffers today, bringing us up to 65 fully paid. They're in different parts of the world, very different parts. One in Central America, one in the Western Pacific Ocean. What links them is the flags of both countries match the color of the UN flag, baby blue and white.
I checked, I know, so I'm not certain.
But that's not Central America.
Guatemala is one, so we thank our friends in Guatemala City. And the other one, I'll give you the name of the capital, Palakir, Micronesia. So we thank Micronesia and Guatemala. This was a good quiz. All right, oui, madame, somebody's overexcited. Let's go.
I don't come here often.
I know. I can't remember your name. Yeah, go ahead. Vas-y.
Okay, quick question on Syria. You know the national dialogue started. Where's Geir Pedersen?
Geir Pedersen is in Damascus.
Oh.
Yeah. No, we've not been invited to observe, so we're not there, but we obviously, Mr. Pedersen's been engaging with a wide range of interlocutors in Damascus, and his team has been following the national dialogue, both the preparation, and will continue to follow the process with interest and to hear the views of a wide range of Syrians about it. And we have continued to stress the importance of the transparency of the dialogue, inclusivity, and credibility, and we await the outcome before commenting any further. Benno, then Dejing.
Thank you. The United Nations Security Council passed its first resolution on Ukraine. You know what's in it. Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
I would. My answer is exactly in what Rosemary DiCarlo said yesterday after speaking. Speaking after the adoption of the resolution, I think I quoted her as well. So I have nothing to add to what she said. She said yesterday.
Okay, I don't remember, but I will
yeah, it's there.
do my research. About the German parliamentary elections, the Conservatives won. Friedrich Merz might be the new Chancellor of Germany soon. Do you have any comment on the election itself?
Well, I mean, obviously, we look forward to working with the next government in Germany, and I think congratulate the German people on holding of an election without any of an election that seemed to be well run on all fronts.
And a last one of the biggest stories about this election was the far right's gains in this election. They doubled their support in Germany from 10% to 20%. I'm talking about the party of the AfD. The Secretary General spoke out about far right ideology in Europe many times. Do you have a comment on this big gain?
Look, I think what the Secretary General said is something he continues to think. I will not make any comments, further comments on the specifics of the German elections, especially as negotiations to form a government are ongoing. Deji.
Yes, questions on Gaza. You just mentioned that the Ministry of Health of Gaza told you guys that 6 children recently died due to severe cold, and there has been report that Israeli authority has put a limit or restrictions on the tents and mobile homes to get into Gaza. Can you confirm that from the UN agency-wise?
Yes, my understanding from our humanitarian colleagues is that there's been a lot of challenges in getting tents and caravans and tarpaulins in. We continue to push. Some are going in, but we need more.
Is that the restriction from the Israeli authority?
That's my understanding, correct.
Okay. Secondly, we know the ceasefire continues for a while. Before the ceasefire, there are many accusations from Israel and from Hamas about UNRWA schools being used as for military purposes. Since there's a ceasefire, have you guys got any chance to check those schools which are being accused as
well, I mean, we are,
purpose?
as I think as we mentioned it, as we're able to access more buildings that we use as schools, we're checking to see if they're able, if they're not damaged and too damaged, if they can be used and reopened as schools. I think UNRWA and the UN in general has been very clear in condemning the use by any party of
Did you find any evidence?
of UN property during the conflict. The vast majority of a lot of these facilities were no longer under the control of the UN, right? We don't have investigative or forensic capabilities to, once we go into a school, to see who used it or who may have used it. And so
Understood. Oh, one last question. I should have asked you this question like a week ago on the polio campaign. Has this round of polio campaign been, get permission from the Israeli authority, or you can just go there and start this round of polio campaign?
Well, I mean, we continue to, my understanding is we continue to deconflict, but obviously, I mean, I think what you're seeing since the start of the ceasefire is what happens to humanitarian delivery once most of the restrictions are lifted, right? I mean, you saw the hundreds, the thousands and thousands of trucks that are going in, the thousands of metric cubes of food they're able to go in. So I think there was a lot of criticism of the UN before saying, we weren't doing our job. But I think it was clear that the reason we weren't able to deliver the humanitarian aid that is needed was because the conflict was ongoing and because of the heavier restrictions. The situation now allows us to deliver much more humanitarian aid. We need to put more in, and it also allows us to do a polio campaign in a setting that remains challenging, but much less challenging than during the fighting. Senora.
Thank you. I was wondering if the Secretary General was surprised in any way yesterday about the new wall alignment when the United States voted with Russia on the Ukraine resolution.
I think the Secretary General has been around the block a few times. He's had different posts in his life, and he has a keen eye for change on the global stage.
Thank you.
Sylvia.
Thank you, Stéphane. Can Sigrid Kaag have another task as a new UN reconstruction coordinator for Lebanon?
No, her focus right now is on Israel, Palestine, is on Gaza. Obviously, I think she has quite a bit on her hands. She's a very capable person, but I think she already has quite a bit on her hands. Stefano and then Maggie, sorry.
Thank you. About peace in Ukraine, does the Secretary General think that it's a good idea at one point to send UN blue helmets in...
I think, Stefano, I've answered that question many times. The dispatching of peacekeepers is something to be mandated by the Security Council, and that the Secretary General's vision for an end to Russia's war in Ukraine means alignment with international law, General Assembly resolutions, and the territorial integrity of Ukraine.
I understand, but I'm not asking if the decision, if he has to take a decision. We know it's not his decision. What I'm
if it's
asking
not
is,
his
does he
decision, then
think
he doesn't
it's a
have to
good
take
idea?
it.
Does he think?
If it's not his decision, he doesn't have to take it, and I'm not going to answer the hypothetical. Margaret.
Just following up on Gaza, in terms of aid deliveries, would you say now that lawlessness and convoy issues have finished?
Yeah, I've not seen any reports of large-scale lawless. Have there been one or two incidents? I haven't heard anything. Nothing, I think, big enough to be reported has been sent up here. It's obviously a lot safer and a lot easier for us to deliver aid.
And have you gotten back any of your trucks that went missing?
It's a good question. I will check the rental count.
And then just one follow-up on Haiti. This week, are we going to get the SG's report before the end of the week?
This week, the Security Council will get the Secretary General's report. Wink, wink.
Got it.
Got
it, wink, wink.
Ephraim, and then Sinan, sorry.
Thank you, Steph. I have two questions. First one, also follow up on Gaza. We're seeing that Palestinian children have returned to school for the first time in the past 15 months. Is UNRWA, I'm assuming they're returning to whatever is left of UNRWA's destroyed school. Is UNRWA involved in this? And since we're talking about UNRWA, it's been a few weeks since the ban entered into effect. What's UNRWA operations like now?
Their operations are continuing, so I will leave it at that.
Okay. Another one, Friedrich Merz said yesterday that he has invited Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to visit Germany, and he would find a way for him to visit without being arrested under the warrant by the ICC. I wonder if this constitutes an undermining of the ICC, a statement like that.
I will reiterate the fact that the ICC remains independent from the Secretary General. We continue to support and respect its work. Sinan.
Thank you, Steph. I have a question on Syria. As you know, the Kurdish-led Syrian Democratic Forces was not invited to the national dialogue today, and it seems like the transitional government is ignoring SDF. And we know that Secretary General and Mr. Gay Pedersen always call on the transitional government for inclusive government in Syria. And is that like something disappointing? Is it like...
I mean, as I said, we will wait for the outcome to comment, the outcome of the dialogue to comment on it. You're correct to point out that the issue of inclusivity is one that we have been pushing very hard, the Syrian transitional authorities, and we will continue to do so. Benno.
Thank you, Steph. I would like to go back to the Security Council and the new alignment and the keen eye of your boss for change.
No,
Regardless,
he is his own keen eye. I need glasses. Yeah.
regardless of yesterday, regardless of the Ukraine resolution yesterday, are we seeing an unblocking of the Security Council right now that could help, in your view, in conflicts like Sudan, Haiti, Congo, etc.?
I think it's a very valid question for an in-depth panel discussion with international relations experts. What we do want and what we do hope to see is unity of the Security Council. There are a host of crises around the world. Ukraine, as we saw yesterday, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, DRC, Sudan, just to name a few, that demand strong action and unified action from the Security Council for the sake of all the people that we talk about every day that don't have food, that are being shot at, and that are being displaced.
And do you think that got more likely after yesterday?
Listen, I think one thing we've learned is to take things one day at a time. Okay, Stefano.
Just a quick follow-up on what Benno just said. Does the
On what
secretary-
Benno asked or what he said?
Well, ask and said.
I know.
Does the Secretary General think that it's possible to have peace without justice?
I think peace and justice cannot be mutually exclusive. On that note, I hope to see you at the stakeout shortly to see Sigrid Kaag because consultations were canceled, so it should be shortly.